when you're studying ethics. I see ethics as always hopelessly tied to an individual's worldview, and this context has to be considered when analyzing their ethical positions. So you have to look at a person's ethics in context of their worldview, because if you don't, you're not going to understand why they think this is right and that is wrong in some situations. Sometimes that even if you share a common worldview, you still can't understand, even though you generally see the world as the same, that kind of thing. But this comes into play. Religious backgrounds, these kinds of things have a major impact on people's ethical systems. And if you try to remove them from that, you're going to it's not going to compute. Okay, it won't compute. When you leave them in that worldview, that's when it should make sense. And when you're writing your papers, for example, if you start out with a worldview that is pretty clear, and then you deviate from that, that's going to get seen pretty easily down the road. So you want to always be consistent, or at least be aware of where your inconsistencies are, and hopefully you will fix them. All right? Because that's part of what this course is about, is realizing what your beliefs are, what are they founded on, why, so on, so forth. And when you're laying out what's right and what's wrong, you're going to have in the background a worldview that is underneath all of it. Okay? So, let's talk about meta-ethics. Alright, this is a field of study within ethics that questions the nature and grounds of an ethical system. Okay, it focuses on the concepts, methods of justification, and ontological assumptions within the larger field of ethics. And this ontology has to do with the study of being. Okay, so meta-ethics is something that really looks at the overall concepts and methods of justification within that larger field of ethics. Okay, it has to do with meta, means after or beyond. That's where the term comes from, and beyond ethics. Okay. An example of a meta-ethical question would be, where do rights come from? And the other one would be, which beings have rights? So let's talk about that for just a second. Where do your rights come from? Who said you have any rights?
The laws.
The laws? Okay, laws don't make themselves.
In our case, it would be the founding fathers. Well,
Okay, founding fathers.
Yeah.
So the founding fathers, so nobody had rights till they came along?
Well, they came from England, and they just saw what was over there and didn't like it.
They made the
Oh, wait.
laws.
What's that?
They're made up.
Okay, they're made up. Okay, now our founding fathers in the Declaration of Independence, who's familiar with that document? Okay, before the Constitution was what?
We declare our independence.
The Declaration of Independence, right?
From
And that's when the war kicks off, and then they declared independence, and then once they got independence, they could sit down and make a constitution, right? Okay, so they declared their independence. Now they got to fight for their independence. They eventually won their independence. Now, in that declaration, it says that man is endowed with certain inalienable rights. Endowed by who? Or what? Anybody know?
God.
This is foundational to our nation. Huh? By their Creator. Okay? So they had a religious basis for their ethical statement here, where your rights come from. They had a religious framework. So that's part of their worldview. Alright? As a whole. Now, I'm not going to get into the, Christian deist debate of, they had different beliefs to some degree, yeah. We're not going to discuss that at this point. But they had that general, in a vague way, by whatever means, that there was an endowment of inalienable rights. What does that mean, inalienable rights? What is that?
It's not divided. It's not broken up. It's not like, okay, you have these certain rights, and then this guy over here has. different rights.
Okay, it means
They
you
were.
can't take them away. They're kind of endowed, they're granted, right? They're given. Okay, so this is the idea that they had, and they stated that up front. Now, we're going to talk more in political science about what those rights were, because they actually kind of borrowed some material there from John Stuart Mill. But the rights, in that case, it makes sense. They come from somewhere. Now, someone back here made a comment that they're made up. They're made up. All right? Which is it? Are they given to you? Does some man make them up? And then everybody just goes along with it?
Depends on your view on
It
God.
sounds good.
What's that?
It just sounds good.
It just sounds good?
Yeah.
Okay. All right, so if you don't have rights that come from outside of, the human sphere, then ultimately, who determines if you have any rights?
You, whoever's in charge.
You? Nobody can take your rights away from you? You said laws earlier.
Yeah.
The laws give you rights. Now you're saying you. But you're subject to the laws.
Change the question since then.
No, it's the same. Well, I mean, where do they come from? You said laws. And now I'm saying ultimately, if that's all there is, what's that?
Since people are the ones that made the laws, it's people.
Okay, it's people. Okay. All right. Any other perspectives? Is there something, maybe there's something in between? Not God, not people? Not much in between, is there?
I mean,
It's one or the other pretty much, isn't it? That's kind of what you're left with. Either there's some sort of supernatural force being what have you, or there's not, and you're left with men, women included, mankind, are ultimately those that decide who has any rights and who doesn't. Okay, and then which beings have rights? We have animal rights activists. You hear that all the time. Do animals have rights?
That's an opinion.
If it's the same thing, then we just said that people give those rights. Animals don't have laws, right? Animals, monkeys don't make up laws. They don't have police. Okay, so it's pretty much we do the lawmaking stuff. All right. So if they have rights, then where'd they come from?
People.
So it's really a matter of what's that? Us. Okay. If it's people, if there's again no God, no Creator, none of that stuff outside of the sphere of mankind, we're it. We rule the universe. If that's the case, then it's people who do stuff. So it's the animal rights activists' opinions versus other people's opinions, isn't it? That's what it ends up being, isn't it?
Yep.
If there's nothing outside of that sphere,
But if you have a
and
different
people are the ones that make up,
Yeah.
who gets rights.